Hi, everybody. This is Brett Ingram, and this is the optYOUmize podcast, the show that helps entrepreneurs build their dream business and dream life. Today, we're talking with Angela Frank, fractional CMO, award winning author, podcast host, and founder of The Growth Directive, a marketing consultancy with a track record of generating millions of dollars in revenue for clients. I'm super excited about this because I know that marketing is really the engine that makes sales and profits possible in business. So, with that, welcome, Angela, and thanks a lot for joining us.
Brett, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited for our conversation today.
I am too. I am too. I've been looking forward to this. So, I have a lot of questions that I want to ask, but can we start off with your background? How did you start your career and what were you doing back then?
I actually got started as an Etsy shop owner. My husband was in the military and he had a pretty atypical enlistment. We moved a bunch of times. We lived in like 4 or 5 different states, 10 different cities. So it was a lot of moving all of the time. All of that within 4 years. So I needed a career that would travel with us, and I really wanted to be in business for myself. And so to get my toes wet, I started an Etsy shop, and we were selling just like little stickers like for the back of your car decals and things like that. But when he got out of the military, I realized that I didn't really want to be an e-commerce business owner. What I loved about running my business was actually marketing and learning what worked for growing my business. So when he got out of the military, I thought it was a great time to go into corporate. I worked a few jobs as a marketing director for different health and wellness companies. And it got to the point where I realized that I could have a greater impact with companies coming in to support them strategically and support them on a fractional basis, providing that really high level marketing strategic support. And so when I realized that, I was able to actually transition out of corporate. I took one of my marketing director roles, turned it into a fractional support role, and I started growing my business from there. And so now what I do is I come in, I help mostly startups, but some small businesses as well with their growth marketing strategy with the goal of creating a plan that will help them achieve profitable, predictable, scalable growth.
It's very cool, and what a great way to sort of transition because, a lot of people I think traditionally will start a business and then they just try to grow the business, or maybe they're in corporate America and then they decide, you know what, this isn't really for me. I'm going to go and, do my own thing, put out my own shingle and try to do that. But to have actually had the opportunity to work in a corporate environment where you're doing that and then split that off to do it fractionally so you get to do it for a lot of other people. I'm sure you've seen a lot of different things throughout your career doing that. Do you like the fact that you're not set in one place with one company focused on them, but you get an opportunity to work with lots of different companies? That's one of the things that drives you for it.
100%. I'm somebody who loves a new challenge. And so by working with all sorts of different companies, I get to not only see and learn what works across a wide variety of companies, but it also keeps my skills fresh and provides all kinds of unique challenges that I can help business owners work through.
Yeah, because certainly if we know there's one constant, it's change.
Yes.
I mean, things evolve so fast, it's crazy. I remember going to a marketing conference, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago, and the guy speaking is a really well-renowned marketer, but he was old school. He was direct mail. He was TV ads. And, now those things are almost like antiquated. I mean, people are so focused on, the internet and digital marketing and all these other things. So it's just crazy. So you must have seen a lot. What are some common misconceptions that you think people have about digital marketing?
I think that one of the biggest misconceptions is that because something works for a direct competitor in your space, it will work for you. And it comes from a good place, right? Like you're looking at a competitor, you're trying to see what works for them. But at the end of the day, your business, your product, and your offer, they're all unique to your brand. And so the way that you market will also be unique to your brand. And so while a direct competitor may have a great jumping off point for you, at the end of the day, if it doesn't work, that's okay because you have a unique product offering that goes a little bit into the second misconception that I see, which is not giving things enough time to fully come to fruition. So just because you see paid ads working for a competitor, you turn those ads on, you're so excited, and after the first or second month, you're not getting the results that you hoped for. Well, that's because paid ads could take 6 months to a year for you to test and learn enough for you to truly unlock that growth channel. So, a copy and paste marketing strategy is a common pitfall I see, and not giving things enough time to pay off is another common pitfall.
I love your second point, especially. I mean, I fully agree with both, but at the same time, the second thing really strikes a chord with me because I've seen so many entrepreneurs and so many business people, particularly with social media or paid ads, they start to put something out and they agonize over the content or the copy or whatever, and they think they got it perfect. So they're going to just launch this, and all of a sudden there's going to be an avalanche of traffic and sales. And I try to explain it doesn't matter how good you think it is, the chances are it's going to be crickets. You got to do it for enough time. And I think, I mean, I wonder what your take is on this. Some of that has to go back to the idea of the old, customer buyer journey, where first they have to be aware of you, then they have to, sort of get that interest, and they go along that journey where people don't usually go from total unknown to, hey, let me make a purchase, unless it's an impulse sort of buy. And so, it's interesting because I think the old adage was it takes 7 contacts for the average person to be able to convert into a customer. So do you think that that's a reason that that stuff takes long, or is it just strictly a learning curve issue of you don't know how to do it for a while?
Well, it's a little bit of both. Of course, if you are new in business, you're going to need to establish and get your name out there. And like you said, it takes many times coming across a product or offering for you to feel like you have enough trust to go through and make that purchase, even if it's a pretty low ticket offer. But anytime that you're launching a new channel, there's always going to be a learning curve. Again, you could have the best training, you could have the best knowledge, but even if it's working for somebody with a very similar product offering, you're still going to have unique things for your brand and the way that you message and market about your offer that you're just going to need to learn. And that takes a lot of time. Even for me as a consultant, when I come in, I have a pretty replicatable strategy for growth, but I cannot copy paste my growth strategies from one brand to another. There are always little nuances and things. So for me, even as somebody who does this like day in and day out, I say, here's the plan. And then we always build in a testing window to make sure that when I then go ahead and end the engagement and we move on, you have a strategy that you know is going to work for your brand because we've already taken the time to iron out all of those nuances. So it's a little bit of both. Of course, you need to give things time to work. You need to get out in front of people, but you also have that learning curve for anything new that you're launching.
Yeah, it's amazing to me that there's sort of that tension between being consistent enough for things to work, but being smart enough to know when, okay, it's not working, I need to adapt a little bit. Because the best laid plans, I mean, I say to people all the time, you can come up with the greatest strategy in the world. But the minute you start to implement it, you realize there's some adjustments you need to make on the fly. Not everything works the way you thought it was going to out of the box. And so there's always going to be some need to make some changes. So let's dig into advertising specifically. You've managed millions of dollars in advertising for clients. What are some of the things that you've learned, or what are some of the key takeaways from all of that?
I think the biggest piece of advice that I could give if you're running ads is to try to make something that's native to the feed. So if you're running a Facebook ad, for example, make something that looks like your friend posted it on Facebook. That is one of like the easiest, quickest wins for most brands. I find that a lot of people who are new to advertising, they make something that looks like an ad, and that's going to harm your conversion rates. The other thing that I would say is have a strategy. So maybe you're not the one actually running your ads, you're partnering with an agency and they're running your ads. Oftentimes, when I come into a business who has an agency running the ad, I see that the agency is doing the absolute bare minimum work required to keep that client's business month over month. And so that means they're not coming with a proactive strategy, they're coming with the absolute bare minimum. So In that case, coming with a strategy saying these are our goals and working with your agency hand in hand, working with your internal team hand in hand if you're doing your own media buying in house, making sure that whoever is actively spending your advertising dollars is testing and learning as much as possible, and having the business owner or your marketing director, someone really driving that initiative, I think is key to success.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So what about from a funnel perspective or from a landing page and sort of where we go with it? I know a lot of people their instinct, right, especially with social media ads, is they want to go for the sale because, oh, if I can just convert this into sales, then I can make it revenue positive and that way I can scale it up. In my experience and from everything I've ever seen, the best you're going to do on your ads initially is break even if you're lucky. Usually the front end takes a loss and then you have to make it up on the back end. Is that your experience too? Is there sort of any sort of hacks or advice with regard to that?
Yeah, well, you said something really key, which is the importance of your landing page experience when you're running ads. I find that a lot of people take a one or the other approach. Like, my ads are what's going to drive my success, or my landing page is what's going to drive success. But in reality, they both need to be working together in lockstep for you to get the returns that you're looking for. The second thing you mentioned, Brett, is that a lot of ads are not profitable at first. You lose money on the front end and you make it up on the back end. However, if you continue to advocate a testing strategy and making sure that whoever is spending your ad dollars is really trying to learn as much as possible, you can get to a point where now you are profitable on the front end. Somebody is coming through, clicking on your ad, making a purchase, and you are doing that at a rate that's profitable for your brand. And that's really my goal. I try to help startups become profitable. And so a lot of what we do is finding the sweet spot in your ad spend. So maybe you are spending, $25,000 a month on ads and you want to scale it up to $100,000 a month. But as you do that, you find that anything over $75,000 a month is really not as profitable for you. So a lot of what I do is finding that sweet spot and then educating around, you could spend more, but the diminishing returns aren't going to make it worth it. So instead, let's take and find our next best advertising platform, diversify your acquisition strategy, and then take that on all the way to its sweet spot. And so a lot of testing and growing is involved when you are trying to run successful ads, and you can take it to a place where it will be profitable for you on the front end.
It's terrific. So, what about from a perspective of break even? What if somebody says, you know what, I'm interested in running ads. I understand I'm being realistic, okay? I'm not looking to make money for my first day. And I understand that based on your industry, based on your price point, a lot of other things are going to weigh into it. But I'm just curious, do you have any sort of benchmarks or any sort of guidelines, either whether it's when you take on a client, what you aim for, or what you've seen as an industry standard for how long from the time you start running ads to if you're doing all those things you're saying, you're proactively managing it, you're paying attention to what's going on, you're making adjustments until you can get to a point where you think it's the ads can be profitable.
It could take as little as a few months, all the way up to a year, depending on your budget and your team constraints. If you're only spending $1,000 a month on your ads, it's going to take you a lot longer to be able to put enough money behind your testing strategy to actually have things that you're learning enough from that it will pay off. So that would be closer to a year. If you're spending $100,000, $250,000, $1 million a month, you're going to learn a lot faster because you have a lot more budget to play with. The second thing is your team constraint. If you are, spending $100,000 a month while you have a lot more ability to learn, do you have a team structure? Do you have an agency partner who can truly make enough ad creative, write enough ad copy for you where that will pay off in your testing strategy? So those two things are really key in accelerating your learnings. If you are someone who is on the lower end of the budget and it's you're the founder, you're running the ads, that's fine. Own that. You just have to be more intentional about what you're trying to learn. don't try and test background colors on your ads. Instead, try and test something that's like literally the most polar opposite that you can possibly imagine. I'm going to test like a super low fidelity user generated content unboxing, and then on the other end I'm going to do a super stylized graphic ad, and it looks like an ad, but I want to see if that works good for me or not. Like, try and figure out the things that are like so total opposite, because that will help you gauge your direction faster even if you have a minimal budget. And so that way you can put a little bit more energy in on that front end, which hopefully means you will be getting the learnings that you need to take that year-long window and make it as short as possible.
I love the testing strategy. I know, I've experimented this with headlines for sales pages, and the funny thing is, I would write 3 or 4 headlines that I'd spend a lot of time on, and I thought, oh, these are gems, but I got to throw a couple in there just to test them anyway. So I put in a couple of throwaways that I expected to have no chance, and more often than not, one of those 2 throwaways is the one that ends up outperforming all the rest.
Yeah.
So, so like either I'm terrible at marketing or I'm just really lucky with my bad ideas. I don't know, but it is true, right? I mean, the market is going to tell us what they want. We can't dictate. It's not like the old days in corporate America where we had all the power as a corporation. So we could create a product, we'd create a service and basically shove it at the customer and say, take it or leave it. What else are you going to do, right? We're going to tell you what you need, what you want. Nowadays, we flip that over, and now the customer determines what we need to. We have to navigate and make those changes to fit them where they are and what they want. And so it's not always easy to predict that, but obviously super valuable once you're able to do that, because that's where the sweet spot is in terms of that profitability. So when it comes to ads, just as a general idea, do you think that all businesses should be running ads? Do you think that there are some businesses or industries that it doesn't make sense, or sizes?
I always come into a business with an ecosystem approach. For new business owners who are just working to build out their marketing channels, I always recommend testing one paid and one organic and experimenting to see what works for your brand. If I come into a brand and they've already been running ads and they tell me that they're not worth it for that company, and we're going to focus on some of the organic channels, taking their content marketing or other SEO strategies, something like that, that's fine. The learning is already there in the business, and that's where the power of the marketing ecosystem comes in. Just like your brand is unique, your marketing plan will be unique as well. And if you view it as something that grows and evolves and changes over time, almost like an ecosystem, right? Like a forest. Think of your marketing as a forest. It gives you more power as a business owner, as a founder, to say, okay, like, I live in the Canadian wilderness. My forest looks like the pine trees and the nice mountain air and things like that. A palm tree doesn't fit in that marketing ecosystem. So if paid ads is your palm tree in the Canadian wilderness, like, don't try and make it work. Don't try and force it to fit just because somebody else in your industry is having it work for them. They may live on the beaches of Hawaii where a palm tree fits right in. So think about it as something that grows and evolves over time as your brand grows and evolves over time, and lean into the channels that are truly working and driving success for your brand.
Makes total sense. So I don't have a lot of experience with paid ads. I've done a lot of things with affiliate marketing. I've been a digital entrepreneur for 17 years, but truth be told, I've never done a lot with paid ads. One of the things though that I've seen a lot is a lot of talk about the importance of the targeting as really the number one factor, because if you don't have the right audience that you're going after in the first place, it doesn't matter how good the message is if it isn't reaching the right people. Are there any sort of tips or tricks or ideas, advice that you have regarding targeting for somebody who's trying to run ads?
Yes. When you are doing your targeting, I'd say, of course, it's important, but also using Facebook for an example, the meta algorithm is pretty good at going out and finding people who are taking the action that you want them to take on your ad. So, what I would advise first is trying to perfect the messaging and the creative. And then, once you feel like that testing strategy is well underway, maybe it's not perfect, then you can focus on okay, what kind of targeting is truly driving results for our brand? And that way you can go ahead and say, okay, I'm advertising a fitness product. Of course, I'm going after people who are interested in fitness, but maybe there's some subset of those people that resonate even more with my product. And so you can actually break out the targeting into different audiences to see, okay, are people who are into ultra marathons more into my product than people who are into I don't know, like swimming or like cardio, but not super intense like an ultra marathon would be. And you can try and get those insights for your brand. I would say there is a point of diminishing returns because the more niche you get with your targeting, the more expensive your actions become. And so sometimes, like, I have one client right now who has just like this insane broad group because their product really can appeal to anyone. And that is their audience right now. And the economics make sense for their brand. And their biggest opportunity is really that creative and the copy messaging because a lot of their ads previously looked heavily stylized. And so we're actually shifting into a more relatable user generated content approach. So, of course, targeting is important, but is it the thing that you need to be focusing on now? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe you need to be focusing on your creative and the copy itself.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know it's complex. There's a lot of moving parts, and that's part of the challenge with all of it. So, for entrepreneurs and for small businesses in particular, one of the challenges they obviously have is they have a limited budget. They're trying to grow, so they're in sort of this catch-22 where they need to be able to generate sales. They need to be able to generate leads. But the easy way, or the presumably easy way they see to do that, is to spend money to be able to run ads or whatever else in order to be able to make that happen. Are there ways that businesses can save money on their marketing or do things in sort of more of a bootstrap way where they don't need a big budget to be able to make it happen?
100%. And that's where that power of the marketing ecosystem comes in. The key thing that makes the ecosystem work is your data and dashboards. So I will get to answering about making ads go further, but the first thing that you need in place is your data and dashboards. So using something like agency analytics or like Google Looker to really make sure that you know what's coming from each marketing channel, and ideally not only what's coming from each marketing channel, but taking your customers and seeing, okay, this channel is driving this customer acquisition cost, this customer lifetime value, this average repurchase rate, and seeing by channel, because you might see that while it seems like you're getting more sales from TikTok, you actually get better customers from LinkedIn. And that is where the huge unlock in your growth will come from because you know what's working and having meaningful impact in your business. When it comes to making ads work, I think the biggest thing that you need to understand for somebody testing with a limited budget is that it takes time to pay off. This should not be a Hail Mary, like, my business needs this to pay off next month or everything's going to go under. Make sure that you have some other marketing channels working for you and view your budget now not as a Hail Mary, but as a testing and learning and investment in your future growth. Because again, we mentioned that with a smaller budget, it could take a much longer time to pay off, even if you are being incredibly strategic about your marketing or your paid advertising strategy. So no Hail Marys with paid advertising. Make sure that you are using it and thinking of it as a long-term investment in your brand.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, what about retargeting? I know retargeting allows you to go back after people at a much higher rate because there are people that have already expressed some kind of interest or taken an action or whatever else. Where does that fit into the equation in terms of you know fit in the marketing budget or fit in the marketing strategy?
I love retargeting. Retargeting absolutely works. For limited marketing budgets, I always prefer, though, instead of retargeting, that life cycle or email communications is what follows up with those people. So if you are somebody who has a larger budget to play with, absolutely implement retargeting. That's something that you can continue to show up in front of people, showing them different messages and finding what will work to get that conversion. And then you can try and move that messaging as far up the funnel as possible. Limited budgets, however, drive to somewhere where you're collecting that email and giving them a freebie, giving them a coupon, and then retargeting them with quotes, retargeting with email, following up with email, trying to get into their inbox and show them valuable information and build that relationship where you're not paying for that impression every time you're showing up in front of their eyeballs.
I've always found email marketing to be really effective because it's low cost relative to everything else. And it tends to be, in my opinion anyway, more transactional, right? The social media platforms are more conversational. So they're less geared specifically to selling. Whereas with emails, people are used to opening an email, clicking on a link, and then, going to a sales page to buy something or whatever else. And so I know it's been a big part of what I've done for 17 years. And most of the people that I know that create software and various other things and launch them on the affiliate platforms actually do better. They make more not from their own products, but from their email marketing that they do for affiliate stuff. So it's kind of fascinating, but you also have that ability to send, day after day after day. Whereas if you run an ad, you pay for it once and then it's gone, or whatever the case may be. So good advice there for sure. I mean, I'm a big believer in the whole email side of things. So some businesses, some industries might not be able to use direct response ads in the same way, right? So it might be harder for them to measure, at least short term, the success or failure, of any kind of a marketing campaign. What should those companies, industries, businesses do?
Yeah, I actually have experience with longer sales cycles for higher consideration products. One of my previous clients sold high-end fitness equipment, and so you don't just wake up one day and decide to spend $20,000 on equipment for your home gym. So this is a real problem that a lot of companies have. How do you know what's working? And when you have a longer sales process, you generally have somebody who is running your sales, either you as the founder or you have a sales team. And so, what we do in those cases is say, okay, taking the entire sales cycle, what are the indications that somebody is going to close, that they are going to be the type of customer that we want, meaning that not only will they close, will they be a painless close, will they be a high dollar close, and try to identify all of those things that take place from the moment that they click on an ad to the moment when they close. When you do that, you can create this qualification system where now you say, okay, we have somebody, they've become a lead. These are our criteria why we think this lead will close at, 50% certainty, 60% certainty, whatever it is for your niche. Maybe it's much lower. Maybe you're selling bulldozers and you don't get very many leads, only 1 in 10 closes. So you need to pay attention to your numbers, first of all, and then identify the key metrics that make somebody a high value lead. Then you can say, okay, our sales process is 3 months, but we know that this person has a pretty high probability of closing. Now we can go out and find more people like them. So by really leaning into the data, we can go ahead and identify our highest value customers and then tell the algorithm, Google, Meta, whatever, to go find more people like them. And it's just creating a simple qualification or lead scoring system.
Very cool. So the lookalike audience feature and things like that, that works? I mean, you think that is an effective way to expand out your reach?
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people in growth marketing say that lookalike audiences aren't working for them. So it's definitely something I would advise testing into. However, I have a lot of clients where the lookalike audiences are still working. The clients that I see the best results have niche product offerings. So, for example, I have a whole food plant-based client who sells education resources for people who are medical professionals looking for continuing education credits. Do you see how every time I said something there, it got nicher and nicher and
Yeah.
nicher?
Yeah.
The lookalike audiences are doing great for them. Somebody like my other client who has the super broad audience, a lookalike audience may not work as well for them because their product appeals to everyone. And so, how is Meta going to really optimize that audience? A broad targeting audience is what's working best for them on Meta. So, definitely something that can absolutely work, but something that I would advise testing before you put all of your eggs in that basket.
That makes sense. So, marketing seems like it's one part science, one part art. How do you balance the creativity and data analysis in marketing approaches?
Yeah. Everything starts with the data analysis. You have to first know, what channel is working for your brand, what type of advertising or paid or organic is working on that channel. But then beyond that, there's a lot of creativity and a lot of knowledge that not only like I would bring as a marketing consultant, but you as a founder and business owner would have. And that's where the creativity part comes in because there's so much available to us now as marketers to be able to test and learn and grow at a low stakes level. You can be a lot more creative and take a lot more risks because you have the ability to quickly learn, turn off the things that aren't working, and double down on the things that are. Whereas before, if you were going to spend a few $1 million on a TV ad, that needed to work.
Yeah.
So it's like a lot more, I think, you have a lot more ability to be creative now. And that is backed up with the data because then it shows you if it's working or not.
Yeah, that makes sense. The other thing about it is there used to be a lot more of a lead time. So I had a business years ago where we were running ads in the back of magazines. You had to get the creative in, 6 weeks before the magazine ever hit the shelf. And so you knew the day that it hit the shelf without even looking at the publication date because the phone started going crazy. And it's really funny because by the time that ad ran, your next one was already submitted in publication. So you had this couple of month lead time where you're like, we better be doing this right because the next one is already paid for and then they're already printing it up. So if it doesn't work, and obviously for TV, the budget's even higher and the stakes are even higher. So yeah, it's fascinating to me. I'll tell you a funny story about the effectiveness of infomercials. So when my older son was really young, he had come down. I don't know if he had a nightmare or something, but he had come down. He jumped into bed with us, and we fell asleep, and the TV was on. And so we wake up in the morning, and we're just talking, and he says, "Hey, say goodbye to that heavy mop and say hello to the Roby. It slides under the bed. It folds up." Some infomercial came on and he literally had the cadence. He sounded just like the guy and he was reciting it. I'm like, wow, that must be a good infomercial. If my son, who's like 5 years old, has memorized this thing from, watching it at night. But you can see why they're effective. They're really good at making those things stick and making those things really, the imagery really, really good. A lot of repetition too. So what about the role of customer feedback? I know like user generated content is a big buzzword nowadays. Everybody wants that social proof element. We want to be able to show our customers getting value out of what we're doing. And obviously, as I mentioned in the outset, right, we're in a different day and age where it isn't companies telling people what they're going to give them anymore. It's people telling us what they want from us. So how should we use customer feedback in our marketing strategies to be more effective?
Yeah, customer feedback is one of the most underutilized but most valuable pieces of data that you have as a business owner. So, anytime somebody leaves a review for your product, you absolutely should be reviewing that not only to see if there's any room for improvement in your product or service offering, but two, to see what type of language that customer is using in their review that you can then go and use in your marketing. Ideally, you would see multiple customers having the same type of language. So let's say that you're selling an e-bike and you sell it mostly to commuters, but you find that when you are reviewing your customer feedback, A lot of people who are, retired and they had a hip surgery are using it to rehabilitate and get back out there and strengthen their hip post surgery. Well, that should be cue to you that you might have a whole untapped market available because you're not talking to these people. You're talking to commuters, but somehow these people are finding your product anyway and they're finding a lot of value in it. And if it's something that you continue to see over and over, now you can go ahead and test it in your marketing. What happens if you actually intentionally go after these people? A less extreme example could be, maybe you sell a toothbrush and you are so proud of your toothbrush. It's like super eco-friendly. It's much quieter than a normal electric toothbrush. And you have like a head replacement recycling program. So you're all in on the sustainability and just like the luxury toothbrush. But what you're finding is people actually really like that it doesn't make a nasty toothpaste mess on their counter. Well, this is a new thing that you can incorporate into your marketing. People are already resonating with your messaging, but you can even make it that much more powerful by showing, a traditional Colgate electric toothbrush that kind of sits on a stand and it's gross versus yours that's so clean because there's no crevices for nasty stuff to be hiding out when you're done brushing your teeth. And this type of research you don't have to spend anything on because you're already getting feedback from your customers. And so by just looking at the key recurring pieces of language, pain points, everything that you get in that feedback and seeing how you can incorporate it into your marketing to make it even stronger is like, I can't even say how valuable that is for founders. So the first thing that I do if I hear that somebody's not reviewing their feedback is just go look at it. It's a treasure trove of information for you.
It's really powerful. I mean, because again, if people are giving you the real world examples, the other thing is most customers are never going to say anything. So if you get somebody that actually goes out of their way, even if it's a complaint, if they go out of their way to say something, that's somebody where you have a real opportunity there because most people, if they're unhappy, they just sort of never shop there again and they might refund or whatever, and then they just disappear. If they're happy, they'll just, okay, it was fine, whatever. They might even rebuy, but most people aren't going to say much. But the people that actually do speak up, there's real value in that because if they're sharers, you can get a lot of information if you spend the time to do it. It's one area that I definitely fell short in a lot of times in the products and services that I've offered because I was so busy creating and doing things. I didn't stop long enough to say, you know what, let's take a look at what people are actually saying and focus more on that. I think that's really great advice. So let's look a little bit into the future. Let's pull out our crystal ball. What are the emerging trends in marketing that you think businesses need to be aware of for things that are coming down the pike here?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest changes we'll see in 2025 when it comes to organic marketing is how the Google snippets are going to impact your organic search traffic. I think that as the Google AI gets better at every time you search something, it just wants to give you everything right there so you never have to leave the page. As that gets better and better, we're going to see a greater and greater impact on organic search traffic. And because there's only a couple references that are cited in that, it's going to be, I think, monopolized by a few people who are either optimizing really well or maybe even eventually having to pay for that spot. And so that's one thing that if somebody is really dependent on organic search traffic, currently I advise them to expand into other organic social channels, which dovetails with my second trend that I think we're going to see even more so in 2025 and beyond, which is founder-led thought leadership. Literally the founder of a company sharing and building in public to create more transparency and trust around their brand. And so that's a great way to harness social media outside of just what your brand can do. And make it a little bit more personal, showcasing the people and the faces behind a brand. Because if somebody's finding you and they really like your product, well, now you can build an even greater relationship with them on the front end, create that trust and psychological safety, which then translates into more frequent purchases, encouraging people to purchase at a higher dollar value because they trust you more. And so not only will we see I think maybe organic search decline, but we'll see organic social media increase as a marketing channel for brands.
Interesting. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense though, because I know those behind the scenes things tend to be really, really, catch on and people really like to see that. Like how do they actually produce this or what are they doing on a daily basis? People get interested. I think people are more connected to the brands and more interested in what the story behind the brand is than they ever were. And not only will they select brands based on that, but they also want to know more and more about, hey, how does all this stuff work together? And so I think that that's really powerful, but I actually think it's a great opportunity for business owners too, because it's nice to be able to be transparent like that and be able to share like what you're doing and how you do it. If you're doing something with, from a place of passion and pride where you're trying to create something great for your customers and for your audience. So I actually really like that trend. I hope it will continue. All right. So where can people find your products, services, connect with you?
Yeah, I have more conversations just like this, as well as solo stream of thought kind of conversations with myself on my podcast, The Growth Pod. You can find all of your favorite podcast players at growthpod.fm. I think it's a great way just to learn about how to grow your business profitably and create that predictable, scalable growth that a lot of founders are looking for.
Awesome. Appreciate that. So one last question I have to ask because I think it's important and I always want to know what everyone's going to say. And that's what's your number one tip for success as a business owner or an entrepreneur?
My number one tip for success is to use an ecosystem approach for your marketing. Look at it as something that you continue to, pour effort into and grow over time. Marketing is something that can seem so complicated, but when you scale it back like that and you look at it as something that you're cultivating, you're growing over time, that's something that has not only been successful for me as a consultant, but successful in the dozens of brands that I've worked with. And so I know it will be successful to you who's listening. So
Love it. That's great advice. All right, with that, it's just about time to wrap things up. I want to thank you again, Angela, so much for sharing all your insights and great tips with us. Visit growthpod.fm for Angela's podcast. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. And as always, remember, no matter what you want for your business and your life, don't compromise, optimize.